Hello everyone, my name is Jennifer Burrows. This is my introduction video for the Educational Leadership course. A little bit about myself. I am married. I have 3 children, 2 girls and a boy, ages 14, 13, and 10. They are all very active in sports, dance, 4-H, all of that stuff. So they keep my husband and myself very busy. A little bit more about myself. I graduated with a bachelor's in criminal justice. So after that, I was a juvenile probation officer for a while, and I went back to school again and got my counseling degree, which then I was a licensed addiction counselor for the same agency that I was working for juveniles. So that has been given me a lot of experience also coming into the school setting. My husband and I moved then to Hugoton, and where we are now. I entered the transition to teach program a few years back, and I am now teaching 7th grade social studies. And I'm working on finishing up my master's in education. Hopefully in May, I'll have that completed. Yay! So a little bit about the challenges during the pandemic. Number one thing that I have seen is engaging students. Obviously, last year when we were all sent home and trying to engage students was super difficult. And just switching that mode to being online was hard. Now having students in class and virtually is still kind of difficult because you're trying to manage the classroom, and plus also trying to make sure that the kids that may be quarantined can hear you, listen to you, also stay engaged, because now you're not knowing exactly what they're doing, and trying to make sure that they're also learning in addition to the rest of your class. Another challenge I've seen is just keeping space, trying to keep space. So if we can keep 6 feet apart, then they're less likely to get quarantined. But it is also harder to allow students to collaborate for projects and to work off of each other. So that's been a difficult thing for us to try to learn and change. And a third one, I'm not going to lie, the mask has been difficult. Being able to hear teachers, being able to speak loud enough, and also for students and teachers, but also like for me, I am I read people's lips as they're also talking, so I like to see that, and I know students are like that too. So it's been a real difficult for me to actually sometimes even pay attention to people talking when I can't watch their mouth. So that has been difficult. Number 4, technology. Finding the right technology at the time, and also to find time to learn it. I haven't always grown up with technology like my own kids have, so they're a little bit more tech savvy than I am. But to be able to know and use all that technology, especially on the fly last year, it was a little bit challenging. Some lessons I've learned from the past year. The social aspect is very important for our students. I even saw it in my own kids having to stay home for so long. That social and emotional aspect for kids is big. And academics is big, but so is the social and emotional part. And being able to talk with friends and express things with friends is big. So some of those students that might not have, even a good home life, they had no one to turn to. So seeing kind of how they are this year, I think we're having to dig them out of maybe even a little bit of depression in some aspects. So I feel like we still have to continue with building them up emotionally and socially. Another lesson I've learned is being tech savvy and just taking the time, maybe one technology tool at a time, and really learning it and grasping it, and then moving on to the next. Not maybe taking on so much at one time, but focusing on one area, getting good at that, and moving on. And I've also learned that teachers, we want our kids to have some grit. Well, I feel like teachers had to have a lot of grit this past year, not giving up and just pursuing and keep persisting, and trying to make sure that our students are learning. The mindset that they talked about in the articles, the first one was all students can learn. They talked about growth versus fixed, having grit and resilience and a positive mind. All of that is good to have for all of our students. I don't feel like it doesn't matter what level our student is at. Every student can learn something, even if it's the tiniest little morsel of information they can learn. And we can't ever go have the mindset that, oh, that student just can't learn anything. The next one is teacher collaboration over isolation, being able to work together. Sometimes don't try to reinvent the wheel. Take from what others, especially being a new teacher, I have really worked at trying to ask other teachers what they do, especially for like my ELL students or my IEP students. What works best for them? What do you suggest I do to help them? That makes making sure you're covering all stakeholders. And happiness and optimism. It is so important. I know we all have life and some things, always there might be something going on, but trying to stay optimistic, it'll help bring success for you and for your students. And what I try to tell my own kids is your attitude determines your altitude. So having a better attitude gets you farther in life. The dispositions. The first one is confidence. Leaders need to have a confidence to lead and may not always be popular though, but they have to have the confidence to lead. It, it might be wrong, but also sometimes you have to admit when you're wrong, but just having that confidence. Um, that kind of goes into the being a risk taker and being decisive. You have to kind of be both of those. Learn by doing and not always be afraid to fail, which that's something I will have to work on. I hate to fail, so sometimes I don't want to see my students fail, but sometimes that's something they have to do to learn from their mistakes. Have a sense of humor. Absolutely. Laughing can ease tension. It's finding humor in even any challenges. There's going to be challenges, and if you can't laugh and have a little bit of humor, it's going to be a long, long day. Um, Empathetically assertive, you want to balance patience and persistence. You also want to view from a different perspective. So just having empathy for people and maybe a different type of life or lifestyle, you have to be willing to understand that and be understanding. And then be a learner. Be a learner for life. Keep your mind sharp. Um, no matter what you do, even if I tell myself this is it, after my master's I'm done, I still want to continue to learn things. It might be new skills, maybe it's something new for my classroom, but just always learning something to keep your mind sharp. Under practices, it was focusing, the first one's focusing and prioritizing. Um, Prioritize events, focus on a few high quality events, and sometimes you will have to say no. I have learned that with this year, we started 2 weeks late, plus we did a schedule change. So I am seeing my students even less. So I really, and all of us teachers really have to prioritize and focus on what we feel is the best thing to be teaching our students, because we all know right now that we're not going to be able to fit everything in that we usually do. So we have to be prioritizing and also being able to say no and not feel guilty about saying no sometimes is a good thing too. The next one is examining feedback and data. Um, you always want to be, I understand, you always want to be reviewing your data. If you don't know where the kids have been and where they're at, then how can you know where to take them in the future? Along with that, asking feedback. How do you learn best? What do you suggest I do next time? Even from parents, maybe parents have ideas that work for their child, and I found that out with my own kids. Because each teacher, you kind of have to tell them everything about your kid and what works best for them, and it's okay that we gain things from our parents, students' parents. Emotional intelligence. This is a must. Treat all people with dignity and respect. Reflect and recognize what can be better. Um, just keeping everybody, uh, respect for all those that are around you, staff and students. Under principles of ethical leadership, the first one was personal courage. You have to stand up for policies that may be harmful to students. I've learned that. And there wasn't much we can do about it. We have already started the schedule change, and we're already through halfway the year. But we know what we did, and we were willing to change it a little bit, and next year know that, you know, this wasn't quite right for our students, so we have to do something different. The next one was public interest ahead of self. We So many times we always think about, well, what's best for me, what's best for me, what about me? But we have to put others first, and for that we have to think about what's best for the students, because ultimately that's why we're here, to help these students and mold these students into productive citizens of the world. Self-control, self-discipline, and integrity. This means being a positive role model. um, you Every teacher, every administrator, they have to be have self-control and self-discipline. That leads into integrity, I think. The next one is task and employee centeredness. You focus on the needs of the students and the staffs, and you have to sometimes balance that out. You can't have too much focus on students and not any on staff, and vice versa. You have to be well balanced in that. Recognizing talent, and this could be with students or staff. Recognize people for their talents and use them in those areas, and then use their strengths, and other people will have other strengths, and then you use those, and it makes everybody's life a little bit more easier. Requiring high ethics from everyone. Ethics is a big thing. Ethics starts at the top, and expect it from everyone, from whether it's administrators, teachers, staff, supporting staff, and students and parents. Sensitivity and understanding, being sensitive to people's needs and just being empathetic about what they need and how they need it, I think is something that a good ethical leader does. Inclusiveness, include all stakeholders when implementing decisions. So sometimes we get wound up in the maybe traditional, what's best for traditional students, and we forget about maybe English learners and IEP. We have to just be open to all types of students and how they learn. Um, so when my mindset and disposition and practices, I know all students can learn. I know they can. Um, Without a doubt, and it doesn't matter if it's a little bit or a lot. They can always take away something from what you're doing. So I don't ever feel like students can't or are not able to learn. um, I feel like I'm always looking to collaborate with others, especially being kind of new to the seventh grade and the middle school. Trying to um, learn from others, and know what has worked and hasn't worked. um, I have to admit, it is not always easy to stay happy all the time, personally or professionally, because I think maybe this last year has kind of brought maybe everybody down. But just trying to stay optimistic and happy and have a smile on your face helps not only you, but a tremendous help to your students. Um, for my confidence, I think I've been gaining it a little bit every year. Every year, I feel a little bit more confident in what I'm doing and how I'm doing it, and that I'm doing it the right way. Um, I have to admit, I'm not much of a risk taker. That's something that I have learned gradually to do, but by nature, I am not one. Um, I do have a sense of humor. I have had to, I mean, being a probation officer with juveniles, you've really had to. There can be some really low days sometimes, but you have to keep a sense of humor. So I've brought that over into my teaching too, and you just have to have a sense of humor with everything that goes on throughout the day. I feel like my counseling past gives me empathy and understanding, and um, being able to be sensitive to those around me, especially students that come from all sorts of different backgrounds and diversity. And I always want to be learning, whether I might be done with educational learning in a school setting, but I always want to be learning something new, something, maybe it's more hobbies. It doesn't matter. Just keep your mind sharp at all times. Um, my schedule makes me prioritize my time because I have three kids. They're all doing something. So, taking master's classes, teaching, all that, you really have to focus on what you need to do first, and then go from there, and then learn. I have learned to say no. Um, I need to improve on examining data. This is something that I need to get better at, understanding what data means. Why are we testing them? What are we testing them for? What the data says. So that's something that I personally need to work on, I know for sure. and then leave people emotionally better than they were when you first met them. If they come into my room, I want them to leave my room better than they were. Under the ethical leaderships for me, um, courage, I feel like little by little my courage is growing. That kind of goes along with my confidence. The more I do it, the more I learn about it, the better I get at it. Um, interest, putting others' interests first, try to think how decisions will impact students, and maybe even parents, and the things that I say or do, how that might affect other people. Integrity, even integrity is doing something even when something the right thing even when nobody's watching. So but usually there's going to be a student watching you at some point, so having that self-control and self-discipline, I feel, are the basis for having integrity, and I will always try to be a good role model to the students. Being centered, I have always believed that we all need to live a balanced life. So a leader can't be too much into what the staff wants, and it can't be too much into what the students want, or even just the parents. We all have it. All has to be balanced for it to work, I feel. Um, Under talents, everyone has talents, and the leaders need to allow these people to use those talents, and that, I think that helps our wheel go smoother. Um, High ethics, holding students along with staff accountable for actions, and this is a big thing. If one part of the school, teacher, whatever, do not hold kids accountable for things, then it doesn't quite work as well. So you have to keep everyone on that same page. Being sensitive and understanding, all views from all people need to be allowed, even when you personally do not agree. Might not be the easiest thing to hear, but you also have to, I mean, everybody comes from diverse areas in their life and different aspects of their lives, and they all have something to contribute, and we need to be sensitive and understanding to that. That kind of goes into inclusiveness. Need to learn, need to earn the trust with students and staff, and cannot be judgmental. I feel like that goes under the understanding and sensitive too. Um, so, how does this all support the educational success of the well-being of the student? Obviously, mindset. Mindset's a big thing. Trying to get students to say, this might be hard, but I can do it, instead of saying, oh, this is too hard, I quit. That's that growth versus fixed mindset. Um, Helping them to be happy and encouraging them and working together. Disposition, being able to laugh, being confident and empathy for others, making decisions and learning. And then it goes into practices. You have to prioritize your time. This also leads into taking feedback from others, whether it's other staff members or even parents or students, and then looking at the data so you can improve students and also help them and inspire them to do better, and along with motivating them. Um, and then the principles: courage, putting others first; integrity, the needs of the students and staff, um, talents of each other, and expect high expectations, and being sensitive and inclusive. All of these mindset, disposition, practices, principles go into, I feel, having a successful educational experience for not just the students, but staff also. Under the standards, the standard correlation, the standard helped me to correlate the assignment by helping to understand and reflect how mindsets, dispositions, and practices, along with ethical leadership, improve the educational success of students and teachers. All of these components are needed in a balanced way for a leader to have success in the school setting. How it was relevant, this whole assignment I felt is very relevant to leaders and how they can lead in a school setting. Taking all of these components and implementing them can improve the atmosphere for not just students, but also teachers and staff. All information discussed, from the mindset to ethical leadership, can improve the outcomes for a school. And then the reflection part, this assignment will help me not only with my interactions with my students, but also with staff as well. I need to reflect on how I can grow and get better, along with helping my students to do the same. Every point made by these two articles are something that I want to improve upon, along with helping my students to do as well. And here's my references. And I thank you for listening. Bye, guys.